Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out. We are, just so everyone knows, we are recording this for on YouTube, so your public comments can be recorded with the consultant, and we will begin in a few minutes. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to discuss the zoning rewrite for the city of Elyria. We have a few members of city staff here. Myself, I am Chris Schoenig. I am the city planner for Elyria. Beside me is Ashley Scott. She is a community development director. Next to her is Dawn Calvert, the assistant safety service director. Daryl Farkas is the chief building official, and Mark Craig is the administrative legal counsel. So thank you all for attending with me. We'll get started here and go over our agenda. So this afternoon, we're going to be going over, we're going to have an informational video to give all of you just a brief understanding of what zoning is, how it affects you. It has a lot of those fun infographics and just an informational video. We're going to go into defining what zoning is as well, sort of reiterating the points from the informational video. We'll have a second one which delves into zoning a little bit further. It's about 6 or 7 minutes too. Followed by that, we are going to go into the new zoning code and go over each of the zoning categories. This is very preliminary. This has not been seen by, this has not been brought forth to Planning Commission yet. It is in the review phase by us as well as a consultant, so any information, any points of view are welcome here. This is an open forum for you, but I do ask you to just wait for questions during the question and answer session when the slides have been completed. So with that, we're going to get right into our first video here, as long as it works, hopefully. It worked earlier, so we'll see.
Zoning is a way for communities to separate land by use or form. For example, an area could be dedicated to commercial or industrial use, or there could be a restriction on how many housing units can be built. Zoning shapes the places where we live, but it also shapes our lives. Local zoning regulations determine where we can find housing, schools, and parks, and who gets to use them. Policymakers initially created zoning codes to protect public health. For example, to stop residents from getting sick from living too close to factories. But from the start, zoning has separated more than just land uses. It has also separated people. In the early 20th century, many communities explicitly used zoning ordinances to racially segregate neighborhoods, effectively declaring that different skin colors were as incompatible as a family's home and a smokestack. By the late 20th century, civil rights legislation outlawed overt housing discrimination. But those explicit racial barriers were quickly replaced by subtler methods. Even today, exclusionary zoning policies that restrict lower cost or higher density housing limit racial and economic diversity and raise housing costs. By driving up housing costs, restrictive zoning can exclude people from equal access to public resources, like schools and parks, and leave lower income workers unable to afford housing close to available jobs. When regions are more economically and racially segregated, everyone loses. Local economies see slower growth, and residents of all races are less upwardly mobile. And finally, despite being created to protect public health, zoning often pushes multifamily buildings closer to highways in areas with higher concentrations of air pollutants. As a result, low-income people and people of color are more likely to live in places that could make them sick. It doesn't have to be this way. When done thoughtfully, zoning can connect people and places, not divide us. Communities across the United States are beginning to re-examine the role of zoning and change the restrictive zoning rules, opening neighborhoods to multifamily housing, walkable densities, and more. For more information and resources, and to find out what other communities are doing to improve their zoning policies, go to urban.org/zoning.
All right, so hopefully that gives everyone just a baseline understanding of what zoning is, a little bit of the history behind it, and some of the unfortunate realities of it. But I thought we would have just sort of a conversation here with people. If anyone's interested in engaging, try to keep everyone engaged here during this conversation. How does Elyria's zoning affect residents' lives? If anyone wants to answer that in the audience. But, you know, it's zoning. Oh, go on. Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, certain restrictions that exist in current zoning codes can cause that, and that's sort of why we're here today, is to talk about how we can change that moving forward for the city of Elyria. Thank you. Anyone else in the back? Absolutely, thank you, yeah. Having industrial uses mixed amongst residential uses, that's not ideal, of course, and that is still, moving forward, our goal is to create a separation of those uses. All right, and does anyone else have anything to add, or? Well, thank you. All right, so moving forward here, defining zoning, this is sort of reiterating what we were talking about here in the video, a little bit what we just had a conversation about as well. But defining zoning, what is zoning? Zoning is local government rules that control land use. In other words, zoning imposes limits on how a landowner may develop and use their land. Zoning regulations restrict features like building size and height as well. What we call in zoning language is a setback. Some of you might have heard of that. That's how far a building might be from the property line. Architectural design can also factor in as well. Signage, fencing, landscaping restrictions as well do exist in the zoning code. Regulations, including zoning maps, are used to show visually where the dividing lines are. And we do have a zoning map currently available on our website as well of the existing zoning, and the proposed zoning is available on our webpage too. So purpose of zoning. Zoning, as we did say, it does have its benefits, of course, as well. It does protect property values, separates residential areas from industrial and commercial zones, preserves neighborhood character as well. Some of your historic districts, such as West by the River, might be considered in that factor, and regulates setbacks, as I previously mentioned, too. Building heights, land use to minimize risks. It promotes efficient growth and prevents haphazard land use. As we did discuss too previously, mixing in an industrial use next to residential, not ideal. So we want to work in the best way to prevent a mix of use there. Designates areas for parks, schools, services, that's your institutional uses as well, and facilitates community input, offers opportunities for public participation. So if somebody wants to rezone their property, that will, of course, go to Planning Commission, City Council, and there are public meetings held for that, too. So people can be engaged in that manner if somebody moving forward wishes to rezone property. It's currently that way, and it will remain that way as well. So understanding zoning in the state of Ohio. Most zoning codes, and this is not just unique to the state of Ohio, but also to across the country, decades old. Our last revision in our zoning code is from 1998, believe it or not. So there's some terms in there that need to be modernized. But townships do have zoning as well, especially cities, of course, that have zoning codes. Ohio is a home rule state, meaning that we have the Ohio Revised Code, which provides us a guideline, but zoning is up to municipalities, up to the city to make their own restrictions. And that's why we're here tonight. Every city is different, and there is not one way to zone a city. Every city has unique attributes associated with it, and we want to, of course, take advantage of the benefits that we have in Elyria with this rewrite. So some of you have heard zoning code, building code. People may think it's the same thing. It's not. Zoning code involves what can be built on the property. Building code is how it is built. It deals with the internals, not always, but deals more, it's a little more detailed than the zoning code. But getting back to zoning here, has a land use focus, mainly concerned with permitted uses of a property. Different areas within the city can have different districts, as we discussed previously in classifications. You can have a residential zoning versus industrial or a commercial. Commercial, you can think of near Midway Mall. Industrial, you can think of Taylor Street. Residential, just a neighborhood. Examples of this include limiting buildings' height, regulating setbacks, as we discussed too. Building code dictates technical aspects, building construction, including structural integrity, fire safety, electrical wiring, and accessibility features. Your point of contact there is Mr. Farkas, seated here with us. Point of contact with zoning, of course, is me. So with that, we're going to go over our second informational video here. This one gets a little more in depth, I think. It's about 7 minutes long, and we will have another discussion after that. So be ready with little topics to discuss.
U.S. cities grow and develop thanks to a little-known and sometimes arcane set of rules and regulations known as the zoning code. U.S. cities grow and develop thanks to a little-known and sometimes arcane set of rules and regulations known as the zoning code. Zoning influences everything from building heights to signage. Understanding the zoning code is key to understanding U.S. cities and how to influence them for the better. In this video, I'm going to go over the basics of zoning. I'm going to describe the pros and cons of zoning. And finally, I'm going to tell you how you can influence the zoning code in your community to make them more walkable, bikeable, and equitable.
So let's start with zoning basics. The zoning code consists of two basic parts, the map and the regulations. Let's start with the map. If you've ever played a SimCity game, you have an idea of how a zoning map works. Every parcel in a city is placed in a zoning district that specifies the types of uses allowed. Now, every city can create their own zoning districts, but they all generally have the same basic types of districts. They are residential, from single-family homes to high-rise apartments, in yellow; commercial, including retail, restaurants, and hotels, colored red; industrial, in gray, though some maps will show them in purple; institutional, which means schools and public buildings, typically in blue; and open space, in green appropriately. Here's an example of a zoning map. You can see that most of the city is residential in yellow. There's a large industrial section in the northeast, and a few areas of commercial in red. Now, zoning maps can get a lot more complicated than just 5 colors. Now, in this example map here, you can see all of the colors just mentioned, with the addition of an orangish color for multifamily residential. It's common for zoning districts to separate not only uses, but intensity of uses. You'll often see C1, C2, and C3 zones, where the increasing number means it allows increasing levels of commercial density. In addition, you may also see overlay zones. These zones, as the name implies, lays over the top of other zones and adds additional restrictions and regulations within them. Okay, so that's the map. It assigns every parcel to a district that has its own set of rules regarding use and intensity. Next up are the regulations themselves. Now, this is where zoning gets its reputation for being so boring. There's no video game that simulates the writing of a zoning code, but it's where all of the important stuff is located, so let's dive in and make some sense out of it. The zoning code, or ordinance, contains sections for each of the zones found in the map. Within these sections, there's typically a use table. This table lists all of the permitted uses within each zone. For example, a use table for a commercial zone may have a bakery as an allowed use, but an auto salvage yard is not an allowed use. Many use tables also classify some uses as conditional uses or special uses. These uses aren't allowed outright, but require some consultation and approval from the city government first. It's more of a case-by-case basis situation. After the use table comes the basic development requirements. This means standards for things like building setbacks and side yards, minimum lot sizes, and building heights. Every city has different requirements for their zoning districts. After the use tables and development requirements for each zoning district, most zoning codes will contain impact regulations, or regulations that are not specific to any one zoning district. These often include regulations for signage, parking standards, historic preservation standards, and urban design criteria.
So that's a really quick overview of the zoning code. At this point, you may be thinking to yourself, that all sounds really reasonable. And you know what? You're right, it is reasonable. And that's one of the benefits of zoning. Zoning tries its best to ensure that new development is built in a way that's predictable, reasonable, and minimizes impact to adjacent property owners. It's why city leaders installed zoning codes in many cities over 100 years ago. Zoning ensures that an oil refinery can't be built adjacent to a neighborhood of single-family homes. I think we can all agree that's a pretty worthwhile goal.
Increasingly, however, planners, civic leaders, and community members have begun to question the practice of zoning. For all of its positive aspects, there are quite a few negative qualities too, and I'll list a couple of the biggest ones. First, communities can use zoning codes as a tool of exclusion. Historically, this happened explicitly. Cities would literally write zoning codes that excluded people from districts based on skin color or ethnicity. Now, these were clearly unconstitutional and eventually removed, but these explicit codes gave way to implicit ones that many communities still use today. The most common way to exclude people using the zoning code is by imposing large minimum lot size requirements and other regulations that increase the cost of building a home. If new homes must be built on 1 acre lots or larger, for example, only large expensive homes will be built. This allows cities to become enclaves for the rich at the expense of low and moderate income families. The second major criticism comes from the segregation of uses that I described as a positive before. Segregating uses can also lead to sterile environments and force citizens to travel large distances between different zones for trips to work, school, shopping, and home. Many communities have introduced mixed-use zones that allow for a mixture of residential and commercial uses to mitigate this problem, though mixed-use zones are typically not widespread across zoning maps. Alternatives to traditional single-use zoning, such as form-based codes, aim to reform zoning and move away from the segregation paradigm. Form-based codes regulate the size and shape of buildings instead of their use. So that's zoning in a nutshell. Potentially useful, but probably could be better. How do you make zoning work better in your community? The first step, go to your city's website and find the page for their planning department, sometimes known as the Community Development Department. In most cities, they will post upcoming meetings and town halls. You may get lucky and your community is in the midst of a zoning code revision. These happen rarely, but when they do, it is an excellent opportunity to make your voice heard. You can attend a meeting and give your opinion, send it in to a planning staff or elected official, or write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper. You can tell them to include more mixed-use zones that allow for vibrant, walkable places. If your community isn't going through a zoning code revision, and that's probably the case, you can do many of the same things, but instead you must make a case that the zoning code is in need of a refresh. Your elected officials may not be aware that their zoning code could be better. You could be starting a much-needed conversation in your city.
The bottom line is that if you want great cities, you need a zoning code that makes it perfectly easy and legal to build great development projects. Zoning might sound like a boring place to start, but it literally determines what can and can't be built in your community.
All right, well, I think that guy speaks a little fast, so hopefully hopefully everyone got everything he was getting at. But I think he does make a good point that there's a fine balance that we're looking for with this zoning rewrite. We want to ensure that industrial uses are not allowed near residential, as we've discussed several times now, but there's a mix of uses that I think would be pretty beneficial in certain communities within the city. And that's how this zoning rewrite is going. That's some of the information that we'll unpack a little bit later. But to sort of reiterate the point of what he was talking about mixed-use zones in Elyria, where is a mixed-use zone, and where could a new one go, or where would you like to see more walkable, vibrant areas of the community? So I'll leave it open to all of you to ponder that for a minute, and if anyone has any thoughts, please. Yeah, I'm sorry, can you repeat your? So the question is, what would you consider a mixed-use zone where you see a lot of different uses in one area in the city currently? Where you might have a coffee shop and businesses all mixed together in the same area, that it's not like a residential neighborhood where there's only homes, or an industrial park where there's only manufacturing or something to that effect. Where do you see currently a mix of those uses right now in the city? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, East Broad Street, Clark Street. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah. Yes. Yes, so the question is, what is this meeting about? So the intent of this meeting is for people to understand what zoning is, how it affects them, as well as what this new zoning code will include. We are considering rezoning the entire city from what it is now to new zoning categories. Yes, we have maps. We're getting to that point, actually, so if you stick around for a few more, we'll get to that point of what the new zoning code Yes. Yes. It's all available currently on the webpage, on the city planning webpage for the city of Elyria. It's all available on there. I have some copies with me, yes, I can hand out as well if you wish to have a hard copy. Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, does anyone else with, yes, in the back? Yeah, North Abbey Road as well, that could be considered a mixed-use zone too, as well as downtown in and of itself. The downtown Elyria area is mix of uses as well, all right. So, the new zoning code, we're here. So, a few years ago, there was a comprehensive plan created, and the comprehensive plan was approved last year in 2024. It provides a roadmap essentially for the future by making recommendations based on the existing conditions of the city. Comprehensive plan acts as a guide for the city's zoning code update, which is what we're talking about here this evening. Due to many changes in technology, business, agricultural, so on and so forth, an update is long overdue. Some of these uses are not listed in our current book. Some things are no longer really used. Satellites, I believe, is in there. No one's really putting a satellite dish in their backyard. Maybe some people are, but anyway, we need to update that. So, like I said, new land uses have emerged as well as a change in federal and state laws. We want to ensure we are in compliance. Components found within the comprehensive plan includes existing conditions, public engagement, and a future land use map. Existing conditions include demographic information such as median age, income level, racial makeup of the community, housing, transportation, and parks. Trends that were noticed from the consultant is that we do have an aging population, smaller households, less children in the city of Elyria. So all of that does have an influence on our zoning code update as well, that we do have an aging population. Some ideas from the comp plan include Illyrians would like to see improved dining options in the downtown area, improved options for transit, improvements to public safety as well. And all of that too is considered in the zoning code update. The comprehensive plan, keep in mind, is not law. It was passed through an ordinance, but the zoning code will become in our code of ordinances. So that's why it's so important to have public engagement here with all of you this evening. Overall, the components of the comp plan do play a significant role in influencing the new zoning code. So moving forward here, based on feedback from community stakeholders, the future land use districts that were created in the comprehensive plan, like I said, this is sort of a roadmap. It's getting us to the next step. So that comprehensive plan created land use categories, and those land use categories will influence the zoning code moving forward. We wish to diversify our housing stock in the city, allowing different types of housing, maybe smaller homes allowed, prefabbed, as well as your traditional builds too. Encouraging walkability as well with small businesses nearby. So going forward here with the zoning code rewriting, what does this include? We are redefining the terms that are in our current zoning code. Updating our procedures to make sure they're more efficient, easier for people to understand as well. It's buried under a lot of jargon, a lot of maybe legalese or planning language that might be difficult for some people to understand. We want to make it more user-friendly. That is the goal here. Public adoption hearings are part of that. That's what you're here for this evening. And the new code we're looking to adopt near the middle of this year. That is not a hard deadline. We want to get this right. This is the way I look at it. We have about 30 years lifespan on this. We want to get it done right. So having these type of meetings with all of you is very helpful. So to reiterate the point, impact on your neighborhood, no final decisions have been made. This has not gone to Planning Commission. This has not gone to City Council. This is a preliminary hearing just to hear the input from all of you. Purpose of this meeting is to provide you with an opportunity to have your voice heard. And most neighborhoods, I do want everyone to keep in mind too, will retain their existing characteristics. If you have a residential home, you can continue to live there. We're not declaring eminent domain. We're not, if you run a business, you're going to continue to be able to operate that business. So the current code versus the new code, how it differs. Right now, we have 18 zoning districts in our city. We're going down to about 8. That's taking it down we're simplifying it. That's the end goal here. Reducing zoning categories can assist in attracting more local business to the community and promoting development on vacant parcels as well by reducing restrictions and similar uses that exist in our current code. We want to implement modern uses in this code. I've alluded to that as well. Different, breweries and Airbnbs, and that's just to name a couple. I mean, there's several other out there as well. So, getting to the new zoning categories here. These categories, like I said, we're reducing it down to about 8. And, we'll just get right to it. Residential 1 is one of our first zoning categories here. This is your newer neighborhoods in the community of Elyria, traditionally with cul-de-sacs in them, not so much in a grid platform, not your older homes. These are homes that are built probably about the 50s or 60s on. This most likely any of you out here this evening, that would probably be your house if it's been built 50s or 60s onward. These are low-density neighborhoods. Units may be appealing to senior citizens and small families. And these portions of the cities include newer subdivisions, as I previously stated. So residential 2, these are your more historic homes within the city, grid platform. It promotes the diversity of housing types. They're very walkable, easy to get to. Not so much you have to get in your car to walk down to the store or anything. You might be able to just walk to the store. Small-scale commercial properties do exist at the ends of the streets, coffee shops, neighborhood grocery stores, so on and so forth. And like I said, they're very walkable areas of town as well. So the downtown district, this is about from 5th Street to the river. Mix of uses, as we've discussed previously, are prevalent in this area. Coffee shops, bars, pedestrian-oriented development, businesses, restaurants, bakeries, pocket parks, plazas, and outdoor dining areas are available in these areas as well. You can think of some other communities in Ohio, downtown districts such as Medina of similar size, Vermilion, Oberlin. Those are some that come to my mind as well to give you a point of reference to outside of our community here in Elyria. So our corridors, these are main thoroughfares in the city. It includes Cleveland Street, Broad Street, West River Road, just to name a few. And its corridor zoning is near significant intersections. It advocates for buildings to be placed near the sidewalk with adequate pedestrian and bicycle connectivity. Encourages density in these areas, even if there might be some, what I would call missing teeth, vacant properties. We want to see those properties developed on and built on. Commercial properties, these areas are, you can think of Midway Mall. That area, Chestnut Commons, that's another one that comes to mind. These are mostly auto-oriented areas. It's not that you can't walk there or bike there, but it's a little more focused on just getting in your car to pick up the groceries or what have you. Usually they're oriented towards highways or major arterial roadways, and they're not compatible with residential. You don't usually see residential in these areas. The commercial zoning district will allow for apartments as well. But outside of that, no residential uses. Moving on here with industrial, you can think of areas within the city such as Taylor Street, where there's a lot of industrial. That's what we're looking for with this zoning category. Currently, we have 3 industrial zoning categories: light, heavy, and special industrial. What's happening here is they're being consolidated into one district. However, heavy industrial uses, mining, heavy manufacturing, that type of stuff will still have to be reviewed by us to ensure that, public safety that's the crux of zoning here. So we want to ensure that that is separated from the residential uses. And the final category here is parks and open space. These are recreational and natural areas within the city. You can think of areas within near the Black River, Elliewood, Cascade Parks. Those areas would be considered parks and open space. No residential development on there. We want to ensure that we're saving our parkland within the city's confines. So moving forward here, like I said, this is just the beginning of this. We're not there yet. We're not having the public meetings yet for Planning Commission, City Council, but we will be having another meeting on the 25th for this as well. Pretty much going through the same slides here as well, but if you wish to attend again, you can. We will have a meeting with local developers as well, moving forward to get their input. There's another component to this. It's a little outside of what we're talking about here. There are the subdivision regulations for brand-new subdivisions that are being built within the city, so a lot of that discussion will be had with them. This will be reviewed by our legal department to ensure compliance from a legal point of view as well. And of course, as discussed, this will go to Planning Commission, a strategic planning committee, or our community development committee. It will go to them as well. And then there will be 3 city council meetings. All these are public meetings that will be held. Stay tuned on the city webpage for more information regarding that as well. We don't have dates as of right now because we're taking our time going through this to ensure everything is compliant. Your voices are heard as well because that's important to us. Like I said, adoption of the new zoning code is to be determined, but that is about it. So we can open up here with a question and answer session here. I do have a microphone that I can hand out. If all of you would be so kind to hand it off to the next person. And whoever has the first question, I can bring it over to you. But let me try to make sure this thing is on first. Okay. Can everyone hear me? There. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? And just so everyone knows, I'm going to be sitting up here with everyone else.
I was wondering about the in-home child care from become type A to type B. That be implemented in the changes?
Yes. So the type A and type B child care facilities by the state of Ohio are allowed by right, regardless of the zoning category. The type A facilities, from what we have in our draft right now, like I said, this is available on our webpage, but it would allow, I believe it's 4 to 17, don't quote me on that, but a higher intensity of children to be on the facility. It would be allowed in the residential 1 zoning district. So if you're zoned residential 1, if you live in more of a community that has like a cul-de-sac, larger lot sizes than, west by the river area, it would be allowed per this draft. And of course, that's not finalized right now.
Are they changing the size of, because right now it's for like centers. So are they changing some of the measurements? If your question is the lots, we are not changing lot sizes at all. We can't go in there and change your parcel, the size of your parcel of land or anything. That will not change, no. Oh, like,
The requirements, yeah. So that, yes, so those will most likely change, those requirements. It might be conditional use depending on the district, but a residential 1, from what, mind if I borrow that real quick? I believe that would be, let me just pull our residential 1. So it would be considered an accessory use, and from what we have here in this document, it would be allowed by right as of this version of the zoning code. So it would be allowed administratively, a type A daycare. Did that answer your question?
for the most part.
Okay, all right. Unfortunately, this is not, it's not finalized or anything. I can't give you it may change or something, but it is considered an accessory use, a type A daycare center as defined by the state of Ohio. So what we're doing is we're updating
everything to be in conformance with, as I alluded to in my presentation, state and federal legislation too.
I'm from a large family, so that kind of freaked me out. If you can have a private daycare center with 17 children in a residential area, is that what you're saying?
Well, it would come down to the what the final document would say. This is a draft form, of course, right now, but it would go up to, per the state of Ohio standards, I believe it is up to 12.
Well, in a residential area, I would throw that one out. That's a lot of screaming, and I don't know who's thinking that that would be okay. I mean, I can understand if it's a separate building with land around it, but not a house next door to me. Is that what you're actually saying? That exists at this time?
It does not exist at this time. No, it does not currently. The current code does not allow for that.
No, ma'am. Our current ordinance governs different types of daycares. Some are permitted outright, and some require what's called a conditional use, which requires special requirements be met, as alluded regarding lot size. Currently, you have to have a lot that is 30,000 square feet in size. Typically, throughout Elyria, we do not have such lots unless you're out in the further west where you have open farmland. That's one of the reasons we're trying to change our code to be a little more cooperative in regards to these types of uses, because the need is there. The change we're proposing will coincide with the state regulations, but we're still in the think tank phase. But what does that look like in regards to lot size versus number of children? Is it more suitable for a commercial aspect because of the number of children? Obviously, we don't want to plug in so many kids and children into a residential lot where it's going to increase traffic, increase noise. We have to be careful how we design it, but we are in that process of what that looks like.
I'm suggesting, I have a degree in teaching, that I was from a large family. I think you're right to keep it in the commercial aspect, because as a resident, that's just, thank you.
I'm back to my regular questions here. Are you going to have these, the map and the regulations and the code?
So yes, ma'am, we actually have a map in the back there that you can take a look at. We could bring that in here if...
I appreciate what you've done here, but I'm going to tell you, as a person just sitting here, if I leave here, I'm going to forget all that. I would appreciate it if you could have handed out some information that we could actually look at and compare. I mean, I think you did a good job here.
Thank you, thank you. But I can provide you with...
I don't know about anybody else here, but I need something that I can see. This is a large community, and we should all have a voice.
And yes, that is the intent, of course, is for you to engage in this process. I can give you a copy of this for everyone else too as well. This is available on the webpage. You can see it, it's public. This is the zoning code, planning and zoning code, the proposed draft.
That complete, or is it just that one page?
It is not, it is not one page, it's the full component of the zoning code.
Yeah, if you had a
And
folder
this,
available, something that we
absolutely, this is available. It is a draft,
Other
keep in mind.
meetings is other than the 26th?
Yes, on the 25th, 6 to 8 p.m., it'll be the same meeting. And like I said, I can hand you this document as well, so you have it for your records. And like I said, this is a draft version of the zoning code.
Personally, I'm concerned about certain areas, and that's why I need
Understandable.
to look at it.
Absolutely, understandable.
Right, I appreciate you.
Thank you. for all of your hard work you guys have done on this so far with the city. My question is, you had residential 1. I have 2 questions, actually. Residential 1, residential 2, and then commercial. And you had mentioned apartments were in commercial. What about like these, like I think it would have been, the previous definition would have been RMD, I believe, which are the like cluster homes and the condos and the attached housing. Where does that fall? Does that fall in residential 1 or 2?
So that would fall under residential 1. That's where a lot of that would. Any of the newer development within the city falls under residential 1. Residential 2 is more of our grid-type streets, your older homes within the community, but residential 1 would qualify for most of the denser.
So through you, Carol, would that mean like when they come in to request the more compact housing, it would just automatically be a yes because it's in residential 1? Or do they have to ask for approval?
Chad, it's very similar to the past process. It's permitted in that district, but they will need a conditional use in order to get that, and that will trigger the subdivision regulations, of which will make sure the density and the spacing. So we do allow it, but it still goes through that same filter.
Okay, makes sense. And my second question is, if any of you can answer, I know we've had legislation on council with this topic, and we're kind of in a holding place with the marijuana facilities and the cultivation places. Is there anything on this that's going to give us a clear answer as to how we're proceeding with the occupancy of those buildings?
So right now in the draft form, we're looking at allowing the marijuana cultivation in the commercial district. But like I said, a lot of this is subject to change. There may be some permeability where it would be permitted in the corridor districts as well within the main thoroughfares in the city.
And that would be the areas, Chad, where these would be allowed, but council still has to lift the moratorium on whether or not it's used, and then what are the regulations involving those types of businesses, and that would be passed through the ordinances.
I have a question in regards to the terminology that I've heard, light commercial. That's something that's going to be a consideration in this rezoning, light commercial. And I pose that question because I live in a community where just a few years ago, there was given permission for there to be a business right in the heart of our community. And when I was made aware of it, I questioned it because it was going to mean there would be large trucks coming and going in the middle of a resident. Even though it's a older part of the community, I felt that it was a hazard. It was going to take away from the integrity of the neighborhood. And prayerfully, and thank the Lord, it was rescinded. But we took some work on our part as members of our community to make certain that that light commercial did not become a reality. So is there any consideration about those kinds of things being maybe done or considered? So what I'm speaking of specifically is it was an elementary school, and there was a business, and they had purported that they were going to do things to help the community. They were going to offer classes and vocational things for the youth in the community. But it was going to require that they would bring in those large trucks, commercial trucks and so forth and so on. But it was not going to speak to improving the community. It was just speaking to enhancing this person's business and giving them another opportunity to have another location for that business. But see, when I approached and asked about that, I was told that it was under the guise of light commercial. So I'm very concerned about that because I live in the older part of the community, and so many times I see a lot of regulations that are not really adhered to as they should be or would be in other parts of the city. So I'm just wanting to make sure that I'm not going to have to be the watchdog again to make sure no light commercials companies come into our community.
Could you explain what kind of operation, what do you mean by light commercial?
Well,
Currently,
that's
we
what I'm asking you. This is the terminology I was given when I questioned it. I was told that based upon it being considered a light commercial business, it
Our-
was okay to be in the middle of our neighborhood.
I would have to see where you're talking about exactly. We do have, our current zoning code indicates BN, business neighborhood, which might be what you're referring to.
If I were to take a stab at it, it sounds like you're trying to say light industrial. That is a current terminology we've had in effect for many decades. If it is a light industrial atmosphere in a residential district, I assume it would have triggered the notice process for a rezoning, and that's how you were made aware, and you went through the process to speak your voice. So it sounds like that opportunity was given, and this proposal, depending on where it is, would do the same process.
Concern is that there was no really notice in the community. It just showed up. And, you know, had I not been privy to some information, it probably would have gone through. So light industrial, I don't want to have that 2 streets away from where I live. I don't want that. I live on 10th Street in off of West Avenue. And so I don't want, even though that building is supposed to be already designed or bought by someone else, I'm not going to be a happy camper if I find that this is done and I have to voice my opinion again and leverage whatever power that we have as a community. Thank you very much, because that's exactly what it was. That's what it was, and they got it for little or nothing.
I'm going to bounce off of what you just said about the notice to surrounding residential lots that are going to be affected. I was told that I heard actually at a meeting that the letter of the law says tax address. Well, if you have a mortgage, your tax address is probably going to be your mortgage holder. Correct? Would that be a correct statement? Would that be why I never received a notice in the mail regarding upcoming zoning changes on the street I live in?
Typically, they're sent to the address, the property addresses, but also if you've got whatever is indicated as the owner's address in the auditor's site, then they'll send it to that also.
Well, there were a number of people on our street which did not receive it, and I don't know if it was just the abutting properties that received it or the whole street. You're talking one city block of homes that are a driveway width apart.
Yeah, the notice
So
would
it
go to
would
the
affect-
adjacent, just the abutting property owners.
And you think it's not going to affect? Can we not relook at that to say, yes, it's going to affect more than just the abutting properties? When the properties are, the lots are so small that you have 6 homes that are like right next to the abutting properties, and across the street, another 6 or 8. It's going to affect, it's in the neighborhood. My question is, could you not consider expanding that from the minimum requirement of the abutting properties to what's reasonable, which is people that are at least in that neighborhood living on that street that can see the property from their front porch?
Well, the problem with trying to have a standard like that is that now every single parcel that you've got where somebody has an application for rezoning, somebody has to make a decision about, well, what's reasonable? What's going to be affected properties? And sometimes it might be in a neighborhood like yours where there's 10 lots on the street, and sometimes it might be in a neighborhood where there's fewer than that or more than that.
Within a mile or 2 radius of, would that not be sufficient? I'm assuming that the property records are such that that could be had.
Well, for rezoning requests, it's the legal requirement is the adjacent property owners. Hold on. They're also putting public notices out there. So what it's intended to do is to notify the people directly affected, but if there are other people that are going to be affected by it also, then the neighbors you'd expect the neighbors to tell each other and talk to each other.
That's making a big assumption.
Well, trying to give notice and having a 3-mile radius is kind of impractical.
I'm just saying, even
even a mile would be, even a half a mile or a quarter of a mile would catch, you know, what I'm saying. You need to drive around downtown and see what's reasonable. I'm asking for something that's reasonable, which is above and beyond the requirements.
So,
We could look at a different radius.
so we can change, with this zoning code rewrite, we can change it, but as Mr. Craig said, where's the cutoff? Other communities I have seen use 500 feet radius from a property, and that can give you a little more breathing room with more people being informed as well. So that is absolutely something we can look into with the consultant, into modifying that language.
Thank you.
If I actually would like to ask you a question about that, because I know that you are a regular city council attendee, and we appreciate your participation that way. I think, you know, point taken on maybe expanding the radius, but we also, you know, there is a public meeting through Planning Commission where there is an agenda created, and then there, typically for rezonings, there are 3 public hearings unless waived by city council before they can adopt the zoning change. So I guess my question for the group is, I would be interested to know where are we, and there's also a newspaper notice when those happen. Where else can we post that information to make it available where it would be easier for people to see those zoning changes without necessarily, you know, creating a process that's unduly burdensome or inconsistent for applicants? I'm all ears for ideas on that.
As soon as my neighborhood knew about this meeting, someone stole my newspaper that had on the front page all the information on this. Neighbors don't talk to each other in my neighborhoods, but they will hide anything, and if they're forced to regulate with zoning changes, I think the best way is to, as many people as you can mail something to. They are a little bit afraid about stealing people's mail, but it's unrealistic to think anything else is going to work. I have so many hidden things I've seen. I don't wish to die and mention them, because that's how violent people who don't obey the zoning codes are sneaking things in. It's very dangerous for us. A letter from the city giving us information is good. I do use the paper unless they think I will have some information in there, and then they steal it. And I get up at 6:30 to get it right after the mail or the guy comes. So, you know, it's just a different way of thinking. I'm glad you people aren't like that, but there's an awful lot that are. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I specifically saw it in the, you know, the presentation about Airbnbs. So, because a lot of other cities are, you know, very negative towards Airbnbs and, you know, really trying to limit them or eliminate them from their city. So I guess one question is Elyria, you know, wanting to be friendly for, you know, Airbnb owners? And if so, will the city limit locations as to, you know, or will it be allowed in any residential area within the city?
That is something we're still looking into with our consultant. Other communities will charge a fee, yearly fee, for somebody to maintain a Airbnb, and they have to ensure that they meet certain compliance standards. So that is still very much malleable right now. It's not finalized as with any of this, but it's something that might be allowed moving forward, as it is in many communities. It's just, where do we draw the line of the restrictions? And, you know, do we have requirements for how many can be on a street or what have you? What, you know, there's adjustments that need to be made before we can have any sort of final say on that. But any input that you have on that matter would be very beneficial. So if you have anything to add to that, I'd appreciate it.
I have quite a few. I've been saving them up. First of all, the type 1 residential, type 2, type 2 being the more traditional grid type. So would the daycare, you said the daycare will be allowed in type 1. How does the daycare with the smaller grid-like patterns in the residential 2?
So per the state of Ohio and the Ohio Revised Code, type B daycares are allowed in all zoning categories. No local or township zoning can override that. All type B are allowed. The type A is where, we can have conversation about where that would be allowed. I mean, we're looking at it as an accessory, and per this document, which is still in draft form, it would be allowed as an accessory if otherwise stated. We don't have that information from the consultant as of right now, but it would be classified as a accessory use on that property. And that's up to, per the state standards, I believe that is 12, I believe it's 6 to 12, or it might be 7 to 12 in residential, yes.
Okay, good. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree there's a need for daycare, and we get some of the best daycare in private homes, I think, so. Are the changes going to, like corridor areas, are the parking requirements, and Mr. Farkas probably knows where I'm headed with this already, are the parking requirements in the corridor area going to change?
So the parking requirements, there is, in planning across the country, there's a change in attitude, I guess you could say, of parking requirements. We don't have that information right now from the consultants, but there has been conversation of eliminating parking requirements in certain districts, but maintaining them in others. Commercial districts, industrial might be preferable to maintain parking minimums, of course. But Daryl, do you have anything to add?
I'll add to that. We're not there yet. We are thinking about that. That part has not been integrated because we first want to establish a foundation in regards to which direction we go. Parking has been a large topic of the discussion because of the proposed reduction in lot sizes for homes. How does that affect how many cars people have? I have kids living at home, they each drive. I mean, that is consideration in regards to the development of this plan. In the corridor, that also is going to be taken into consideration in regards to how we handle what's proposed versus the uses that are going to be allowed, and what does that look like in regards to a reasonable parking amount. The proposal right now is to reduce the number of parking spaces that our current code says. For example, you may be required to have 10. We are considering reducing that, but we haven't made it there yet as a balancing act of what that actually looks like versus the diversity of uses proposed. So we're still in the process. That's a great question, by the way.
So right now, we have residential commercial, then we have general commercial, and certain businesses are allowed by right in general commercial, where they have to go through the conditional use process in residential commercial. So when we change those areas to, you said we're eliminating quite a few zoning designations. So the corridor, we're going to eliminate basically residential and general commercial to just a corridor area then, correct?
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The last one is the mall. With the recent transfer and ownership of the mall, I'm imagining with what we heard in the proposal from that company that they will be wanting to put industrial in as a use for the mall area. So what can we expect to see that zoning change?
So per the map that we have up here, if you look at the mall area, that is the red, that is commercial. That is where it's going to lie for the proposed zoning category. Of course, it's malleable, but it's going to be commercial.
So it won't be industrial use, because in the presentations they made, they were going to have, car manufacturing and things like that. I don't know how that could change.
Currently, our zoning district has what's called an overlay for the mall. It's business general to promote local businesses and larger types of box stores, plus an overlay of a light industrial district with certain restrictions that are triggered by design review to also invite different types of product manufacturing. That mix of use was, I think, the first stepping stone for the proposal of this zoning change to show the diversity of how that works. And that invites many different types of businesses into that area. And the corridor aspect, I think, we're not there yet, absorb that same type of mentality to have both the same diversity in that particular zone. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
And to add to that too, the commercial zoning district in the proposed zoning does allow for light industrial uses, not heavy, not special industrial as it is currently, only the light industrial uses, which can include warehousing per se.
Okay, I think that in I don't know the lady in the first seat. I've been to a lot of meetings, but I found out about this meeting through my water bill. And I think that the water bill system is a great way to contact and let residents know what's going on, because that's how I found out. I hung it up on the bulletin board in my kitchen, and maybe if we had an agenda coming up for the quarter or something, I don't know if the water bills are divided up by ward or if something's affecting a certain ward when it gets mailed out. But I did learn to add to your question you asked us, I learned of it through the water bill attachment. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'm really glad to hear that that was effective to get the word out. I will just be very honest and transparent with you. It is prohibitively expensive to print that out and mail something each time we get a zoning request. So unfortunately that, and we also get the zoning requests, you need a lot of lead time to be able to put that flyer out in the utility bill. And with the zoning requests coming in, we just wouldn't be able to meet the timeline. So I appreciate that so much, and unfortunately for the individual zoning requests, that we wouldn't be able to accommodate that. But thank you. I'm very pleased that it was effective for these public meetings.
Using your first name, but I think we have that kind of relationship. I didn't quite understand what you were saying, what your reference was in terms of how could we better advertise this. He kind of said he used it was through the water bill. Well, I received a flyer, a very colorful flyer.
Mm-hmm.
Placed it on my refrigerator, and I've had it for some time. But I also can, through my phone, I can actually get portions of the Chronicle. And if there is a lead story or something, it's usually on the front page. And I did see that on the front page via my phone. So I'm just wondering, are there other places in the community where we could get this into the hands of people? Because I don't know how you feel, but this doesn't seem to be much of a representation of our community. And we don't have much of a age range here, so I think that maybe we need to even brainstorm and consider some of the places. I was thinking the libraries,
Mm-hmm.
The libraries could be places, but I think that those need to be just a little brainstorming to say where are going to be the most effective places, I work for, I'm a part of an elder group, and I know that in this one building there are 30 people, 30 residents. If I had this, I'd be willing to give it to them, but I think that some of those kinds of out-of-the-box thinking kinds of ways to, to advertise this kind of a thing would be very beneficial for you and all the work that you put into this, So I'm always available to talk, but I just thought there might be, help other people to say, where would you might think people really, where people go, they frequent often. Doctor's office, we used to use that for Girl Scouts, different places, but I'm not going to belabor this, but I just wanted to be clear in understanding what your reference was.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. And to clarify, we are investing in promoting this because there's not a single parcel in the city that won't be impacted by this change. Now, that said, the vast majority of properties are not going to see a change in your day-to-day lives. The concept is to broaden the use and make development more friendly in the city and to expand uses. So I think for the vast majority of property owners in the city, for this zoning change, the way we classify the zoning codes are going to change. But most residential areas probably won't see a tremendous amount of difference in day-to-day. I don't want to say that it won't happen in pockets or it won't happen in commercial areas or anything like that. But it will impact everybody. So we want to make sure that we're doing a huge push to get the word out on this and this effort. So I appreciate the ideas. We're all ears on how to get that information out. What I was referring to about not being able to put it in the utility bill is when we get individual requests for rezoning changes. And that's because sometimes those can come in 2 weeks before a planning commission meeting, which doesn't give us enough time to really turn around a broad advertisement for that. So that's what I was referring to on that aspect.
Okay, hello, thank you. This is my first meeting. Thank you I met with Mr. Farkas and Mr. Schoenig. I say it close enough?
That's correct. You did great.
Right. But I do appreciate the invitation here, listening to everything. I don't know if exactly, our conversation earlier, where that plays a part, but since you invited me, I'm going to bring it up anyway. I am a business in the corridor, Cleveland Street. I own Studio 828 Salon and Spa. I have been a business owner in this city for 10 years, and I have been blessed to be able to relocate and expand and be able to broaden our services that we do have for our customers and the community. And everything is going pretty well. I'm just running into a roadblock when it comes to I want to be able to offer massage services. And when I did present this, I was given ordinances that I've realized are almost 40 years old. And in those ordinances, a lot of the stuff is just no longer relevant. The language is not relevant anymore. The language is actually, if somebody was to promote it as a massage parlor, they're going to get cited. The city is going to, the people are going to come. I operate out of integrity. I have been emails, calls, I've met with people. I want to be able to bring these services in, and I'm getting hit with this roadblock. The biggest one is I'm being required to provide a window unobstructed in a room that people are getting a massage in. I have been a guest of many massage places here and abroad, and I've never seen that. And, it's a violation of privacy. I don't think that anybody would feel comfortable, and in the ordinances, they want me to have a separate room. But in the room, you change. The person steps out, and then you get unchanged. You're the only one in the room. They want to have a separate room, a locker room. And a lot of these ordinances are very antiquated. One of the ordinances is it is illegal, and it says illegal, to operate a massage on somebody of the opposite gender. And so when I was having conversations, I'm being told, we know that it's old. We know that it's antiquated, but there's really nothing we can do. That's hard. I've operated above board my entire career. I've been a cosmetologist for 24 years in this area. Like I said, my business has ran with no issues for 10 years. And, we just had a grand reopening, 10-year special. The mayor came, and I got a proclamation, and Mr. Sarah was there. And it's just, I'm frustrated. I'm really frustrated because I'm not trying to do anything. And I understand. I know what's going on out there. I've been grown for a minute. It doesn't look like it, but I have. I understand what's going on. But, you know, I just need some consideration and a thought process when it comes to wanting to offer this and all the bumping of the heads that I'm getting. I've spoken to everyone, and I'm getting nowhere. And it's frustrated. You know, I want to be able to provide a great experience and a service to not only my guests, but to the community. And we want to bring business into the city and not have it continue to go out. And I'm trying to bring it in, and I'm continuing to give resistance. And so I don't know, you know, zoning was brought up, but I'm in the zone, but I don't. Yeah.
I want to speak to that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I remember a few years ago, I did stumble across that ordinance that said it was illegal to do massage of somebody on the opposite gender, and I couldn't believe I actually read that in, 2022 or whenever I read it. So thank you so much. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. And it is not business friendly, and it is not conducive to modern business. Absolutely not. So that is a separate part of the ordinances, so it doesn't fall into zoning and it doesn't fall into building. It is directly related to massage establishments. So my commitment to you is that I will talk to our law department and see what we can do to get that changed and amended. And if I could just get your contact information before you leave.
You actually emailed me over the summer.
Did I?
And I emailed you back, and then I've tried to call you, and I didn't receive a call back.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I missed that.
You welcomed me, and you said, yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, let's fix that tonight. So we'll get that taken care of tonight, and we'll connect, and my commitment is I will work on this. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Dwight Brown. I'm in the 5th Ward, and I've just got a question about what is the zoning for the area by Wilkes Villa? Because it looks like they have industrial over there, and I don't think it should be there, but just questioning about what that is. Is that light industrial? Is that it looks like a junkyard? I think part of that property butts up against South Rec there.
So that area would be a mix of R2, R1, residential 2, residential 1, with some commercial mixed in there as well, off of Fuller. Does that answer your question?
why is it registered as commercial? There was a dairy there, and there's a big pile of junk there. We have to drive by that every day.
The reason why that's commercial is most likely there's some sort of commercial property that's existing there. That's what we're trying to keep with the fabric of the existing built environment.
Okay, and what's the status of it? That old Crawford's Dairy that was there is like a big pile of rubble.
I can answer that question. That is 317 Fuller. We are currently actively pursuing that via demolition orders for the ownership to clean up the property. That is actually in process as we speak. Does that answer your question, sir? Thank you.
Are any other questions? Oh.
Hey, I just wanted to comment two different things. One, in regards to your question about how to communicate with everyone in regards to like zoning changes and things. I don't know if this is feasible, but for starters, I personally think that the 500 feet like that you said other communities have done, I think that's a fair middle ground. I know that it would be expensive to reach out to everyone, but I think in those areas that are directly affected, around the corner, different things like that, that would be a reasonable accommodation. Also, I don't know if this is something that's been discussed or not, but Elyria City Schools, I know we get calls for like each individual school. So if you have kids at Eastern Heights, you might get a phone call that's specific for Eastern Heights, Westwood, and so on. I don't know if there is something that, depending on where you live, that could be just an automated call that would say what's going on in the city, and even direct people to that reminder, just to direct them to the website. Because I know you said there's so much information available, but I think that just as somebody who's doing day-to-day life in the city, that it's not going to come to the front of my head to be like, hey, let's check zoning on Friday. So I think that maybe sending out that call that, hey, if you're interested in participating or understanding these changes, that this is where you would look at those. And I'm sorry, Mike? I think that, yeah, that opting into that, or even if those were automated things that went out throughout the city for various things, would make sense.
Yeah, there's a community notification system that I know we used to use Nixle a while back. Now there's a different system. WINS, that's it. So yeah, we could look into whether or not we could configure that so that we could get them more targeted. But people have to opt into that system. But you do that because you want to know if you got a water main break or you got some other issue that's going on in your neighborhood. So that's a good idea.
And my one other question, it was in regards to the Wilkes area. I do a lot of work throughout the community in Lorain County. I work predominantly just with families and children. And I'm just curious, like, what those commercial expectations really are for maintaining a property. I've worked within the daycare setting and with families, like I said, in the Wilkes area. And as somebody who frequents homes and families, especially on our south side where we have Wilkes or some of our families that may not be as affluent, that the expectations seem to be very low for how those properties are maintained. And ultimately, my concern, just as a parent myself, would be like the safety of the children and the options for the people in that area. If it is commercial, what is the purpose of this commercial property? I know that you said there are some changes, or like you're trying to make sure that they take care of like the rubble or whatever it was, but I know there's like a vast area of just like nothingness, and I'm not sure how far that expands, but it's not a well-maintained area over there, and it's not safe for children, and there are a lot of children in the area.
Some of that crosses over from a zoning concern to our local property maintenance concern. Vacant land, if it has junk and debris, abandoned cars, refrigerators, that is something that can be addressed via a property maintenance complaint that you're more than welcome to file anonymously. We just need an accurate location, and it will be investigated. We do pursue these as diligently as we can. It does take time. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but we will get there in regards to getting compliance. So if you have a site, please feel free to either give me a shout out, I'll give you my card, give me an address. We'll be more than happy to check it out.
Hi, my name is Kim Black Brown. I also live in the 5th Ward. And my question is to that same area that she's speaking about, that I heard there was a proposal, a group of people a while back, a couple of mayors, 3 or 4 mayors back, and they were going to present to the city if they would buy that property, and then if they would be able to expand South Park and have a, you know, that people could go through there. Did they ever think about the city buying that land and maybe selling it to the metro parks so they could kind of beautify that area instead of, it's going to still be, I know you guys are cleaning it up, I get that, but how good are you going to clean it up? Is all that fencing coming down, all that debris? And can it be some type of beautification there? So when people drive out of Wicks Villa, that they have something beautiful to see instead of always a pile of junk. I think that's something that, you know, the city should get behind on and, you know, work with other organizations, the metro parks or whatever, and just don't let that just sit there to be for commercial. Because I really don't, that's a residential area, and that made it worked back in the 50s, but now it was 2025, and I believe that that should be rezoned for something else. That's just my 2 cents on it. And another thing, you're talking about communications to meetings like this. I'm disappointed also that people are not here. And I think, I don't know if you did post it on the City of Illyria's web page, but I don't recall seeing it. Maybe I missed it, but that's another way that you can report these meetings. And like they said, the robocalls, because it's a shame that it's only a handful of people here for this meeting. So the people have to be made aware of what's going on. An effort could be made to contact different organizations that they could be emailed a flyer. You can do a distribution list. It would take, you know, one administration person to get the email addresses of churches, the events, and send them all the flyers so they could post it or they could send it out to their members. I don't think that would be a hard thing to do and wouldn't cost you but what, 2 hours of pay for somebody to put that together?
I will address your first inquiry in regards to the upkeep of properties. Again, that is not something directly related to zoning. That is more so of a property maintenance. Keep in mind, we do have properties that have ownerships, and the ownership has a right to continue their current use that they have operations of. We can't arbitrarily come in and say you have to stop what you're doing because the zoning changed. They are, in essence, grandfathered in or considered non-conforming. So we do take that into respect of their current use, just to keep away from any kind of legalities. In regards to the new changes, I'll defer to Chris in regards to the non-conforming use, which we are currently in the works of rewriting because we just had a draft submitted today. So we do take that in consideration. We are trying to look at what we have already, the current businesses that are in full operation, and how those work compared to adjacent neighborhoods. Keep in mind, the current city we have now, as I have used this phrase before, is a melting pot of diverse zoning districts. You go back 100 years ago, you walked to work. It was right next door to a factory. Now we are completely opposite. We drive to work miles away. We have an existing infrastructure that is already intact with many current businesses. We're trying to be considerate to adjust to both. Doing that is quite the juggling match, so we're still in the works of doing that.
Are there any other questions?
Are any of these changes going to change for as residential 1 and 2 where we can have chickens? I need some eggs.
We do have an egg crisis.
We might have to change that to commercial with the way egg prices are.
So there, a lot of neighboring communities have adopted ordinances that have allowed for chicken coops on properties. That is something also that is, we have spoke with the consultant about as well. I don't have anything on that as of right now, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. Much appreciated.
Anything else? Okay.
Just a quick question. I live in the 3rd Ward near Vic Janowitz Park there, and I see that it's got corridor going all the way down to Chestnut Ridge. Is that a new status for that South Abbey Road, or is it something that was brought in from previous zoning?
So corridor is a new zoning district for the city. I would assume currently that is a mix of residential and some retail, which would be BN or BG in our current code, business general or business neighborhood. Could be mixed in there as well. Like we said during the presentation, the corridor, main thoroughfares, anything like that would be zoned corridor. So that's just to reflect, what we mentioned in the presentation as well.
Any other questions, comments?
Just quick, if we come to the next meeting, what are you going to do?
So the next meeting will be in a similar format. We will go through the presentation slides that we have gone through today just to give, we wanted to give people an option as to what day, if they couldn't make it tonight, they could make it next Tuesday. But of course, it's an open forum, the question and answer session. If you have more questions, you're free to come. In the next meeting, I will try to have a digital map up here for us to explore everyone's property. So if that's of any interest to any of you, please come out next Tuesday if you can. But like I said, all of this is available on our webpage. My business cards are at the back there of the room as well. Reach out to me if you have any questions, concerns. If you want any of this information in printed form, I'd be more than happy to get it to you. But like I said, it is available on the webpage as well for your informational purposes. As I said, it's a draft. We're still somewhat early on in this process. But yeah, it'll be sort of regurgitation of the presentation slides that we had this evening. But if you have any further questions at the next meeting, you're more than free to join us. Thank you.
Just one more question about the 5th Ward. Is that new development down there off of Indian Hollow, is that on the map here? There's a big new development out there off of Indian Hollow Road.
I'm sorry, your question again.
That development that's out there off of Indian Hollow Road that actually you could get through it from Middle Avenue, Middle Avenue. You could drive all the way over to Indian Hollow. There's a big development there, probably about 400 homes. Is that considered the 5th Ward?
I do not have a ward map in front of me, but that area would be residential 1 per this map.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if it was on the map to be able to see that. And is it in the 5th Ward?
Ward boundaries are down there.
Because the ones that are on Middle Avenue are considered the 5th Ward. And some of the houses back up in the, on Southwood Drive are also in 5th Ward. Some are, some are not. I don't know how that works.
Sir, we'll be more than happy to look into that information.
Okay.
If you want to grab Chris's card,
Okay.
he can reach out to you that way or vice versa.
All right.
And we'll figure that out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can pull the ward map up for you guys real quick, if that's of help. Okay. Oh, we don't have the... Okay.
All right, were there any?
A question that I have is, one thing that I wrote down is that the potential for allowing lots to be populated with, I believe it was said manufactured homes or homes of smaller size. Now, I don't know what the minimum size for any new home built in Elyria is, so I'm sure any one of you would probably be able to share that with me. But what is being proposed, you know? So, and I'm just going to throw a number out there. Say the minimum is 1,200 or 1,500 or 1,800. You know, are you, you know, is that going to be lowered to say 800 or 600? You know, are we talking tiny homes, accessory dwelling units? You know, so I guess there's just a lot of options.
There is. Right now, I don't have a number for you. I wish I did. But a lot of communities throughout the country, they've expressed, you know, due to affordability issues, that there's a desire for people to have smaller homes on their property. We want to ensure, though, with this that it meets Ohio Building Code standards as well, for safety of individuals, not just slapping something up that doesn't meet any standards. So we want to ensure most of this is just a balancing act and trying to find the right balance and compromise for all of this. So I wish I had a number for you of what that minimum would be. Hopefully, moving forward here very soon, we will have some numbers for that from the consultant. But like I said, there's my business card at the back of the room if you want to reach out to me with that question, just to keep in touch, of course. And we will keep this information posted on the city calendar. That's where some of this information was shared. It was also posted on social media, Chronicle Telegram, your utility bills as well. Sorry, I'm going on a little tangent here, but I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I guess one question that I have is there a minimum square footage of new homes being built now?
Ma'am, currently our zoning code does not require a minimum square footage. Many communities do. Typically, when I used to formerly work in Grafton, it was 1,000 square foot. And that was purposely designed to reflect what the building code asks for, specifically the residential code. That number is not locked in the residential code, but there are certain life safety aspects that have to be met. Minimum square footage for a kitchen, minimum square footage for a bathroom, for the bedroom. A lot of those requirements cannot be accomplished in a tiny home, is the catchphrase being used. So trying to implement into the zoning, consideration has to be taken into effect if implemented from a zoning. What's the practicality of doing that from a building code perspective? And if it is allowed, we want to make people aware that if you do this, it has to meet minimum requirements. That particular size is not yet designated, but food for thought for habitability, number of homes. I mean, you have people with, some people are retired, they want to downsize, they want something more manageable. Does that involve an attached garage? Does that just involve a square where I want to live and have my living room, my bathroom, and my kitchen all in one space? That is more so of a building code aspect and also triggers a property maintenance code from life safety. So we are looking at that and how that plugs into the zoning code. It's still in the works. That's a great question.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
All right, so just to get brief understanding, how did all of you hear about this event tonight? Just to get a brief consensus of how everyone heard. Water bill. Well, I think we had a few ideas that were floated here that we can definitely consider moving forward that'd be beneficial for the community. But if anyone doesn't have any more questions, thank you for attending. Like I said, there's a second public meeting for this on the 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Reach out to any of us, of course. And thank you for coming out tonight.